Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. For today's Limited Wednesdays video, I thought I would play a little bit of Murders at Karlov Manor Premier Draft, the best of one format, so as to fill up a little bit more of my collection and hopefully get some good games in. So let's jump right into it, see what we open for our first pack. And off the bat, the Kylux Voltstrider is a good mythic rare if you can build around it. However, that is the key. Building around it can be quite tricky, and seeing like a really flexible card like a Killer Among Us might be the better pick here. We also see its removal spell with Deadly Complication, but this is a 2-color removal spell which could be a little awkward to build around. And there's also a Person of Interest in red, as well as a Topiary Panther in green, which we might hope to wheel if we pick up this Killer Among Us. And yeah, I think that'll be the pick over the Voltstrider. I'd rather just stay open and run Killer Among Us, which is a pretty easily splashable card. Now, we see a okay follow-up with a Buried in the Garden, having some good synergy here in that they're both green, and it's a fine removal spell. But there's also another Person of Interest which we're passing, so whoever's drafting red will probably be pretty happy. There's also a Fuss to Bother as an excellent red-white card. Not sure if you're ever running this in blue, but for any aggressive deck, both sides are pretty excellent. But I think I'll pick up the Buried in the Garden, as being a pretty flexible piece of removal that could also ramp us up to some big bombs. So yeah, I'll pick that up. Next up, in our colors, I think the Topiary Panther is really the only thing that we'd be looking at. Otherwise, a Shock is pretty good in red, but the cards we've picked up so far aren't necessarily the best along with Shock, though it would certainly be an excellent card. And there's also the Covert Ambusher, but I'm not too big on this card, being essentially a 5-mana 4/5, which might force a block at some point, but surely there's better ways to remove our opponent's creatures. And yeah, I like the look of this. Pick up the Panther, start finding ways to fix our mana, and maybe we could go green, white, and even another color. Finding another Topiary Panther here could be pretty good. Don't think we're running the Soul Search, and all the other cards are pretty average. I guess Extract the Confession is a good removal spell, and Reasonable Doubt is okay interaction, but picking up a second Panther is already enabling a whole bunch of stuff, helping us put stuff into the graveyard for potential collect evidence costs while also fixing our mana. Here we have some options, I suppose. The Sample Collector is an okay green card, growing itself by collecting evidence whenever it attacks. There's also the Cryptex, which is generally pretty weak, but seeing as we already found 2 early ways to put stuff in the graveyard, it might be worth it to run this. There's also the Tunnel Tipster as a way to ramp up a bit, and that might be the pick. Maybe look for some sort of rampy deck. It's either this or the Cryptex, and the Tunnel Tipster is a slight bit more flexible since we could add the mana whenever we want, so I'll pick that up. Ooh, finding another Cryptex now. There's also a Combined Chrysalis from the list. It essentially sacks a token and makes a 4/4 that gains flying from it, and gives all of our tokens flying, so it could give all of our Killer Among Us tokens flying, but I think this card is a little bit too slow for a format like this. Essentially a 2-mana play that does nothing, and then we have to invest 4 mana just to get a 4/4 out of it. It could eventually start generating a bunch of tokens, but I'll just pick up the Cryptex for now, giving us another potential ramp piece. The pick here is probably either the Case or the They Went This Way, as a way to keep fixing our mana. And I think I like the Case of the Shattered Pact a little bit more as an early play that we can maybe look to flip with other cards that we pick up. So Coerce to Kill could be a pretty tricky card to splash, but it does start fulfilling the requirements for flipping our Case. That is definitely a consideration. Otherwise, Pick Your Poison would be the pick in a best of 3 format, but there's also a Riftburst Hellion, which is an excellent disguise creature. especially with the Tunnel Tipster we already have. I'll pick up the Chorus to Kill though, start speculating on this case. And not much from this pack. The Person of Interest actually wheeled, I'll pick that up. Though we are unlikely to go into a full pivot into red. I don't think we need a second case of the Shattered Pact, so I'll just pick up this Person of Interest. I'm really surprised these both wheeled, as well as on the job. I guess maybe nobody's building red-white. Unlikely to run any of these cards though. Maybe it was even better to just let them through and keep those colors open. But at the same time, it's never too late to pivot, and these are pretty premium cards in their colors. So now, opening up a Wojak Investigator as probably the best card alongside the Gear Drake, the Galvanize, and maybe the Shock as a close next power level. Soul Enervation. I haven't played too much with this card, but I guess it's a fine removal spell, though a bit costly. I like the Wojak Investigator here. We're looking to unload a lot of our cards early to start ramping up for bigger plays. So we're likely going to have less cards in hand than our opponents. Means I'll pick up our Investigator here. And seeing several options now. I think Assassin's Trophy is a pretty bad removal spell in this type of format, especially since it ramps up our opponents. A Nervous Gardener could be a consideration as a way to further fix our colors, but there's also a Flotsam Jetsam, which could be a castable spell for sure, as well as a Push-Pull, which works as a finisher of sorts if our opponent has huge stuff in the graveyard, or maybe even to bring back the Topiary Panthers, or as a removal spell. It is definitely a solid pick. I'm between the Gardener and the Push-Pull. I guess I'll take the Gardener. So now, well, another Fuss to Bother. But this won't have too much synergy with what we're trying to do. And I suppose not many of these cards have a lot of synergy. Perhaps the Fairy Snoop could be a consideration as just another permanent that fulfills colors for a case of the Shattered Pact. Might have been right to pick up the second case. I'm not super excited about anything here, so I'll just pick up the Fairy Snoop. So here I think I will pick up the Rift Versalion. Start grabbing some Disguise creatures to maybe synergize well with their Tunnel Tipster. Jesus, to synergize well with their Tunnel Tipster. The Case of the Trampled Garden is good in a more aggressive deck, and so is the Haza Vigilante, but we're looking to play a more of a rampy strategy. So I'll just pick up the Helion, see what's next. Alright, next pick. There is a solid card in the Case File Auditor if we can find more cases. Oh, this reveals an enchantment card. So this could help us dig for our Buried in the Garden or our Chorus to Kill. Actually, it has some good synergies, especially if we pick up more cases. Maybe it's worth it. I've never actually ran this card, but could be cool to run. Otherwise, the Vidugazi Inspector would be a pretty solid pickup. But I will go for the fun pick and try out this Case File Auditor. Nothing too exciting here. Don't think we're running any of these cards. I'll just pick up the Covert Ambusher for now. Don't really care about the Slimy Dual Leech. And don't really care about the Gorehound, but maybe if we find something like a Insidious Roots, we could run this. Ooh, and World Soul's Rage could represent a pretty good finisher in a rampy deck like this. So yeah, I'll look to pick this up. Nothing too exciting here. I'll pick up the second Gorehound. Ooh, and the crowd control ward in wheels, so I'm happy to pick that up as a pretty solid body that we could flip up and put a bunch of counters on. Also surprised at the shock wield. And I'll pick up a second Fairy Snoop, but we're unlikely to run both of these. And this is just fodder at this point. The case wield, but we're surely not running this. Ooh, and I'm actually pretty happy to see the Vengeful Creeper. This gives us some flexibility, giving us a way to destroy artifacts and enchantments. Let's see what we have here. Ooh, a Leyline of the Guild Pact combos with our Case of the Shattered Pact. So that'd be pretty interesting to play. Though, that's a pretty terrible card otherwise. Maybe I'll play it for the memes. Let's see, otherwise maybe the Sumala Sentry would be pretty good, especially considering we have a good amount of disguise cards at this point. Even the Fairy Snoop works well there. You know, I'll pick up the Leyline of the Guild Pact and hope to get the case combo off with it. Oh, and now finding a Rakdos Patron of Chaos. Yeah, this is an easy pickup. Insane bomb, and we're already splashing a bunch of colors, so this should be easy enough to fit in. Sweet. Judith, on the other hand, is a terrible bomb, so unlikely to run this. Got some good aggro cards with the Enforcer and the Neighborhood Guardian here, but don't think they make the cut here. I'm not really sure what to run. I don't particularly like any of these cards. I suppose I'll pick up the Dramatic Accusation as some bad removal. Now, a Bite Down on Crime could be pretty good, especially since we have the 2 Panthers to fill up our graveyard. Public Thoroughfare also represents a 5-color land, which could be pretty solid here, honestly. There's also the Exit Specialist to bounce our opponent's creatures, and the Glint Weaver as a big finisher. But I think a tad bit overcosted here. Actually, the Gravestone Strider fixes our colors a whole bunch, so I think this is the pickup, being a solid 2-drop, which we definitely lack in this deck. An Illicit Masquerade, I don't think I can make that card work. I'll instead opt to pick up this Makeshift Binding as some premium removal. And this Kylox is pretty bad from my understanding, so won't be picking that up. I suppose the Crocodile will have to do here, though we're unlikely to run it. An Exit Specialist could be a consideration. I'll pick it up for now. Otherwise, maybe a Case of the Gateway Express as a removal spell, but this is much better in an aggro deck, which we are not really in. I think a Deduce is a pick here, though unlikely to run it. When the Sumala Sentry actually wheeled, happy to pick that up. Don't think we want any of these. And I don't think we have enough synergies for the Case of the Filch Falcon to make it in. Public Thoroughfare also wheeled, as well as the Glint Weaver, but I think we would rather have the 5-color land. Okay, and this is a pretty messy deck. It's always tough to build 5-color decks like this in Premier drafts where it can be a little tricky to think through all your possible options. But we surely have some solid cards. World Soul's Rage as removal or as a way to finish the game is pretty flexible, and I don't think we're running those Gorehounds since we didn't find any Insidious Roots or any big reasons to put cards into our graveyard, but besides the Cryptics, I guess, which we won't be running, seeing as Topiary Panther is really the only thing we're easily putting into the graveyard. Otherwise, this looks like a pretty solid deck with good ways to fix our mana, as well as some solid removal. Let's see, this is all removal. The Exit Specialist is kind of like pseudo removal. Let's take a look at what enchantments we have. We have 6 enchantments we could grab out with the Casefile Auditor, but sadly only 1 case that we could potentially flip with it. But maybe that would be a reason to run this Case of the Trampled Garden Witch Wield. I'll pick that up for now. Is there any other card here that we would run? Don't think so. Maybe cutting this Exit Specialist so that we don't have to run too much blue. And the Fairy Snoops should be straightforward enough to flip, seeing as we're looking for both blue and black sources. Or well, mainly looking for a black source for our Rakdos, but we can kind of just have a blue source for free that we could fetch out with our Topiary Panthers. Our 2-drop slot is certainly thin, but I think we could make this work. Is there any straight up bad cards we would rather not run? Don't think so. So yeah, I think this is what we'll run. I'll go down to 1 of each of these basic land types and go up on green and white sources. With, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 ways to grab a land of any color, and Leyline of the Guild Pact that kind of pseudo fixes us if we have it in our opening hand. Buried in the Garden is also another source of mana fixing. So 6 ways to find blue, black, or red, 7 with the Public Thoroughfare, and then 8 with the basics that we have. I think that's plenty of basics for our splashes, in which case I'll just run another forest. Make sure that we're hitting our fixing. Honestly, I'll run 8 forests and 5 plains, since while the plains are important, we'll pretty much always have some way in hand to fetch out our plains if we need it, and then fetch out our other colors throughout the rest of the game. So yeah, I'll run it like this. Let's see how the games go. Alright, for our first game, we're on the draw with a bit of a slow hand, but got some pretty good removal with Chorus to Kill, maybe stealing away an opponent's important creature, and Case of the Shattered Pact could help us grab out our remaining colors. Sumala Sentry also synergizes well with a Fairy Snoop, so pretty happy to see that. And Unscrupulous Agent will make us exile a card from our hand. I'll put away this forest. Following up with a Case, I suppose. Or maybe just play the tap land now. I'd rather get material onto the board and thin our deck a little bit, so I'll play out this Case. And I'll grab a white land for a Sumala Sentry, which is a little awkward since we want a blue or black source to be able to flip our Fairy Snoop, but I think we'll be able to find it. Thankfully our opponent hasn't had the fastest start, and they're on green-black, which isn't too scary of a color. They're definitely playing for the late game, and I think our late game will be a little stronger. Ooh, now a Casefile Auditor is pretty nice. Means we could maybe fetch something up and stop our opponent's attacks. So yeah, I'll run this out. Finding either a Killer Among Us or a Makeshift Binding. I like the Makeshift Binding a little more, so I'll go ahead and pick that up. We're still a bit far from the Killer Among Us, and having removal in hand is much more important. Opponent swings with their 2/2. Is there anything that could flip here and take us out? I guess they could have a the 3 mana 6/2. I'd rather keep our Casefall Auditor. I think I'll go for the Sumala Sentry here, as well as the tap land. And then look to maybe... Oh, it's whenever a face down permanent I control is turned face up. Okay, so maybe I'll play it a little different here. Playing out the Fairy Snoop face down into the Public Thoroughfare, tapping it down. Or maybe just the Case of the Trampled Garden, giving our Casefall Auditor 2 1/1 counters. But then we're opening up to them just removing it. I really want to get this tap land out of the way, especially since it fixes our colors, so that's also something I want to speculate on. Yeah, I'll just play the Sumala Sentry and the tap land, tapping down our other land. And hopefully these blockers are good enough to stop their aggression. I think opponent was bluffing with this creature when they swung that last turn, since there was no holds after the swing. And they won't swing this time. I'll go land for turn. And maybe a Case could put in some good work here, or I could just play a face down card. I could solve this next turn and dig some more with the Casefall Auditor. But I would have to play like a Vengeful Creeper this turn, which honestly I'm not entirely against. I'll just play this face up, pass it over to the opponent. We are realistically not too far away from flipping this case since we already have blue-black. Just have to hit one of our red cards, or maybe like a Leyline of the Guild Pact. Opponent plays out a Fester Leech as a 1-mana 1/1 that could buff itself up and mills them 2 cards whenever it deals combat damage. This isn't too scary. Sweet, so we find our land and I could look to flip this case already. It's also pretty nice to see our opponent miss out on a bunch of lands. Yeah, I'll go ahead and play this case, putting counters on our smaller creatures. And playing down a face down card, holding up this makeshift binding for whatever big threat our opponent puts out. And I'll hold back for now, dissuade our opponent from attacking and hopefully clearing the way for some crazy case plays. Oh, and now I find a Buried in the Garden, fully fixing our mana. So maybe next turn I could look to flip this face up, putting a counter on it and on the Sumala Sentry. Ooh, an Axebane Pharaoh, a 4/4 with haste and death touch is pretty scary, but thankfully we block pretty well into it with the Vengeful Creeper, and opponent will just pass it over to us. I could take care of the Pharaoh already by discarding the Panther and hitting it with Buried in the Garden, but we have a good enough block already with the Vengeful Creeper. Oh, but I guess we want to attack this turn with for flipping this case. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Keep hitting our land drops. Grabbing out blue, I suppose. Oh, I could even make the Pharaoh mine with Coerce to kill. Maybe it'd be better to grab something like the Fester Leech. Yeah, let's go ahead and take this Pharaoh out. Swing again with our Vengeful Creeper. giving it a 1/1 counter and starting to put pressure on our opponent. Opponent found their 5th land, but they are down to 2 cards in hand, so I'm not too scared here, though they could have some scary flips. We know that at least one of these cards is a bigger creature since the disguise cost was greater than 3. Or perhaps they're just missing their colors instead. Definitely another possibility, though it seems like a pretty straightforward green-black deck. I think I'll flip the Fairy Snoop on main phase. Try and find something relevant here. Oops. I think regardless of how we tap our mana here, it won't really matter much, so I'll just go ahead and tap that land. Finding a Crocodile or a Panther, I'll happily pick up this Crocodile. But I'll play the face down Nervous Gardener as it represents a card we could flip for our Sumala Sentry. And I'll go ahead and put more pressure, swinging in with both of our creatures, buffing up the Sumala Sentry so our opponent has a tougher time blocking it. And if they look to block with a bunch of creatures, we could buff it up to a 5/7. They'd have to block with at least 4 of their creatures, 3 of which have to be their 2/2s, and they'd lose out on 2 of their 2/2s. If our opponent blocks like this, it's going to be a big blowout. Well, I'll still flip face up our Nervous Gardener, seeing no blocks from our opponent, so as to keep buffing up our Sumala Sentry. And just pass it over to our opponent with a pretty solid board. Don't think there's any team-wide buff effects in black-green, but they could certainly have something like a Devious Cover-Up to wipe the board. However, that's not the end of the world since we still have some pretty good cards in hand. I could Coerce to kill one of their face-down cards, but I think I'll just swing with the team. I'll actually Makeshift Binding now. Maybe hit the... I'll hit... Doesn't really matter, it's all random, right? But I'll hit the 3rd one they played as maybe the most valuable card that they would rather not lose. Seeing as they attacked with this one early on in the game, that might indicate that it's a creature that they don't mind losing that much. When I find a Riftburst Alien with the Makeshift Binding, I'm happy to trade that. I could also go for a Coerce to kill, but I'll just swing for now. Swing with the team, maybe? I think it's safer to just hold back some blockers. Actually, I'll swing with the team. Nah, but they could flip something up and get some good blocks here, so I'll swing with these 2 and keep buffing up our Sumala Sentry. If they do spend all their mana to flip one of these, then we could just hit it with Coerce to kill on 2nd main. And they have a Vengeful Creeper, who may be taking out the Buried in the Garden, or taking out the thing with Riftburst Alien instead. Oh yeah, that'll block our Fairy Snoop pretty well. And then they'll block with the rest of their creatures. So I will order blockers like so, taking out the Fester Leech, which can grow, and they're 5/5, leaving them with a 1/1, a 2/2, and a 6/7 Helion. Sadly losing our Fairy Snoop, but happy to know some of the stuff they had face down. And actually, before I Coerce to kill, I'll play down this Crocodile. Ooh, opponent's looking at our graveyard. I guess they might have a push-pull in hand, grabbing out the Creeper and the Panther to swing in for a bunch of damage. Otherwise, their graveyard isn't looking that great. Oh, they just flip a Sanguine Savior face up. Oh, giving their Helion lifelink. Pretty sweet. And they'll swing in for 8, somewhat stabilizing the board here, getting themselves a bunch of life, up to 15, but they are still facing down this Case of the Trampled Garden. And actually, if I steal the Riftburst... Oh, I should have stolen the Riftburst Helion last turn, because I would have flipped the Case of the Shattered Pact. That would have definitely been great. Now I could look to steal away this face down card, but I would much rather flip our Case and grab out this Helion. Swinging in with our face down card, getting in for quite a bit of damage. If they decide to block it, I flip up a 6/6. Don't think there's anything for 2 mana that could threaten taking this out. But there does appear to be a hold from our opponent. Could be their Disguise Cost, could be a card in hand. Don't think there's any removal spell here that does it. Oh, and they did have the Hunted Bone Brute. I thought the Disguise Cost for this was 3 instead of 2. Shall I flip this over? I suppose so, since we'll get a clue out of it. And we've already grabbed out most of our enchantments, so sadly miss on the Casewall Auditor. Thankfully, haven't seen the Leyline of the Goat Pact just yet, since it would be a pretty dead card at this point. But maybe that's the next card I draw, because would it be magic if it wasn't? Next turn I'm swinging in with Double Strike and Trample thanks to the Case. Opponent heals for 2. But thankfully we'll untap with our Helion and be able to block their Savior. What did I say? What did I say? Would it be magic if I didn't draw it? Let's go ahead and crack this clue. No need to play this land, just buff up our Nervous Gardener and start swinging for a whole bunch of damage. So this is 8 damage. I'll just swing like this. Opponents put up quite a bit of a fight. They had some gas in their face down cards. Looks like they're collecting evidence for something. Maybe an Urgent Necropsy? Well, yeah, that would put in a lot of work. Hitting our Gardener, hitting our Course to kill. That is pretty unfortunate and might be the game. Oh, but it's just a murder. Okay. Happy to see that. No Urgent Necropsy just yet, if they even have it. And they'll swing in with the Savior, which I'll happily block with this Helion. Not sure if they forgot their own card had reach, but happy to take that trade. And now a Helion of our own. I'll start by swinging with this Auditor, see if they have any removal. And likely threatening lethal next turn with the Helion. Okay, so now we might see the Urgent Necropsy if they have it. They keep taking a look at their graveyard, so I can only assume that they have that card, but I guess I would have used it now to take out our creature. Let's go ahead and play this Helion. I'm happy I did the thing on the very first game. Not sure if we'll have such a crazy game as this for any of our other games, and I'm not even sure if we'll win this one. Oh wait, they have it doesn't add up to grab out the Riftburst Helion and suspect it, so they could certainly swing for lethal here. That's what it was. I didn't realize this was an instant. That's pretty interesting. This always looked like a sorcery type card to me. And a removal spell here would certainly do it. But thankfully we make it to blocks. And can even take out this Riftburst Helion with our own. Sweet. And we got to take theirs out for free since they didn't choose to hit our auditor first. And opponent packs it up. Sweet. On to the next game. Okay, game 2, on to draw this time. With a keepable enough hand, we have our colors, and we have a Wojak Investigator to hopefully stabilize the board. A little awkward to play Public Thoroughfare here tapped on turn 2, meaning we won't have any plays, but hopefully it's good enough. Opponent has their own Case of the Shattered Pact. Perhaps playing a 5-color deck of some sort, but maybe they could just be using this to fix, though that's pretty unlikely. Yeah, I'll go ahead and get our tap line out of the way. Look to play the Nervous Gardener face down, I suppose. So that we keep hitting our land drops. Oh, they hit our Gardener with a long goodbye, so pretty happy about that. I thought about running out the Vengeful Creeper to take out the Shattered Pact down the line, but not too paramount for us to do it just yet, and happy to be rewarded. Now from here, they already used their removal, so it might be safe to play out the Wojak Investigator. I definitely want to keep the Creeper in hand to prevent them from flipping this case, but then again, it's quite a while since till they flip it, so I'll go ahead and play our face down card now. Maybe draw out a removal spell from them, which I'd be pretty happy to see. But they'll just look to swing in with their 2/2. No blocks. They flip up a Crocodile here, presumably, and yep. They get an Investigate, but we will hit that with the Makeshift Binding, and be pretty happy about that. I think that's our best play, right? Yep. Did lose out on some health, but still happy overall. I suppose I'll cycle the Topiary Panther here, finding a green source. Since a second green source is the only other thing we care about to be able to cast our next Topiary Panther. And a Snarling Gorehound from them. Means they're probably playing something like an Insidious Roots or some sort of Collect Evidence deck. Alright, sweet. Seems like we'll get to untap with our Vengeful Creeper. Oh, and I said green, right? Setting up a pretty huge World Soul's Rage already, but I'll just play the Wojak Investigator for now alongside the Case of the Trampled Garden. Buffing up both of our creatures. And opponent seems to have a murder for our Wojak Investigator. That's fine by me. I'll go ahead and swing in. So next turn we're already pretty close to flipping this case, putting 6 power toughness onto the board. I guess this only cares about power. Now, a case of the Stash Skeleton is something we'd very much like to hit with the Vengeful Creeper over the Shattered Pact, since they're still really far away from hitting this. And a face-down card from the opponent. Means they get to Surveil with Gorehound, but they keep it on top, interestingly, so that could be some gas. Oh, and a Killer Among Us comes at a really good time. They're not really threatening with the case of the Stash Skeleton just yet, and they'd have to wait till their end step to flip this, so I don't think it's too important to flip our face-down card just yet. I'll just look to swing for now and cast out this Killer Among Us. Choosing Goblin. We can already hit them for X equals 5 with World Soul's Rage. But honestly, this card is pretty bad in our deck, seeing as we don't have the best ways to put land cards into our graveyard. I'll block like this, showing them that we likely picked Goblin for our Killer Among Us since we didn't block with it, but taking care of this Gorehound. Not sure why they attacked with all. Could be a sweeper, a deadly cover-up perhaps, meaning that we do lose out on our creeper, which is too bad, and are looking to top deck pretty well here. Oh, but it's just a Crime Stalker sprite, not the worst. Tapping down our Goblin though means that we lose out on the Killer Among Us value, for now at least. And yeah, I'll just swing in again with our Creeper. Flipping it up and hitting that Stash Skeleton. Taking them off a potential tutor down the line, and flipping our Case of the Trampled Garden. But even without the case, if we get to untap next turn and if our opponent doesn't heal any life, we will be taking them out with the World Soul's Rage. But they could have a removal spell for our human into a swing in for 10 damage if their face down card is big enough. Let's see if it is. Might have been right to block the face down card earlier with one of our 1/1s. Or maybe double block it and force them to flip it to see what they have going on. Opponent swings with all, and they flip up a Basilica Stalker, which will be 7 damage. And they'll gain a life, putting them slightly out of range of the World Soul's Rage, but hopefully if we get the damage in with the Goblin, oh, and they tap out, so we'll be able to get the damage in with the Goblin and close out the game. Sweet. So that's 2 wins so far. Let's swing in. Might as well activate the Killer Among Us. And hit them with the World Soul's Rage. Sweet, GG's opponent. On to the next game. Okay, game 3 on the play now with a pretty slow hand, but I guess we do have some disguised creatures on turn 3, as well as an airtight alibi to protect them. I actually took out the World Soul's Rage in favor of this alibi. Kind of funny that I already drew it. Yeah, I felt like World Soul's Rage was really not doing it, but when finding a Killer Among Us is pretty nice. But we don't have enough ways to put lands in the graveyard, so World Soul's Rage was a little too slow. I'll start by playing this Crocodile face down. finding plenty of our early lands is always a good look. I'll start by swinging in with a Crocodile. If they block, I will use an Airtight Alibi to protect it, but just looking to play our face down card instead, keep putting material on the board. And thankfully anything scary they play we could eventually hit with Chorus to Kill once we find our black source. Killer Among Us could already put in some serious work next turn. And a Topiary Panther helps fix our black. So I'll hold off on playing the Killer Among Us just yet since our opponent is holding up some mana. And I'll rather hold up this Airtight Alibi, finding our black source for the Chorus to Kill. Let's see, I suppose I could swing in here and they block and I could make this a 4-4, but not sure if that's big enough. Let's see what they have under there anyway. I'll swing with both. Hopefully it's something small enough that I can block with the Airtight Alibi. And they block the first creature. Oh, just letting them trade, fair enough. And it was an Ambusher, so about an even trade. Happy to just hold up this Fairy Snoop and flip it up to maybe find some good cards. Opponent seems to be on several colors here, maybe even 5 colors considering we see the Public Thoroughfare and a Killer Among Us themselves. Okay, sure thing. I'll flip this up on end step. Finding a Binding or a Tipster. Certainly a Binding will put in some serious work here. And a Public Thoroughfare of our own is a little bit too slow. I'll look to play that on a later turn. And I could Makeshift Binding now and maybe speculate on whatever creature they chose, but that's just a 1 in 3 chance, and I'd rather let them get the counters first and then hit whatever they put counters on with the Makeshift Binding. So with that in mind, I'll play the Killer Among Us, and it would have actually been right to play the Public Thoroughfare this turn, tapping down one of our 1/1s that we create, but I think this is fine enough. Let's name Merfolk this time, and hold up our attackers. I suppose they can swing in with a team here. Oh, I could even hit them with Coerce to Kill if they buff up their creature, since putting counters on it means that the 1/1 is suddenly a 4/4. So we're just straight up taking control of the creature. And an Insidious Roots, making all of their tokens into mana dorks, is pretty interesting. That's a neat interaction. Let's see if they also have a way to exile this Culvert Ambusher, and they likely named Human since they're swinging with a human here. That's fine by me. I'll take the damage, let them get their value. And a Hard Evidence to make a little crab. Yeah, I'll just go for the Chorus to Kill, taking control of their human and making it a 4/4 Death Toucher. Sweet. And I suppose I'll also play this Thoroughfare, tapping down one of these guys and swing with our Merfolk, swing with our Snoop, and maybe just swing with a Merfolk and look to buff it up. They block with a crab, but I will make it a 4/4. Maybe drawing a removal from our opponent, which it does. A Soul Enervation starts draining us whenever they trigger their Insidious Roots, so that's pretty scary if they can find a way to exile cards from the graveyard. Opponent is certainly on some sauce. Playing a face down card, still has 6 mana available to them. but it looks like they'll just pass it over. And finding a case file auditor here could be pretty good. But no hits is too bad. Pretty close to flipping a Case of the Shattered Pact if we pick it up, so that's something to look forward to. I'll just go ahead and swing in with our 4/4, keep pressuring our opponent. If they decide to block or something here, I will happily hit it with Airtight Alibi. Ooh, they flip up an Aurelius Vindicator. Oh wow. For X equals 2. Oh, and this can exile cards from the graveyard. That is pretty interesting. Yeah, I will not let this happen by going for the Airtight Alibi now. So they get their creeper back and they drain us, as well as getting a plant. But this isn't the worst spot. Next turn I could go for a makeshift binding to take care of this Aurelius Vindicator. But likely taking 4 damage here, and they'll heal up to 15. So we'll trade life totals. That's interesting. I never realized that this also exiled cards from graveyards. Huh. Opponent with a whole bunch of mana and a Sharp-Eyed Rookie, alongside a Sanitation Automaton, Surveilling 1, and let's see if they put it on top. They do keep it on top, so likely a playable of some sort. But thankfully it looks like they don't have too many more ways to exile stuff from their graveyard. I guess we'll be giving them the Ambusher next turn by exiling this Vindicator, but taking that flyer off the board is pretty important. Sharp-Eyed Rookie is pretty scary since they could start growing it and drawing cards, but hopefully they miss on any creatures they have. But we could see that just now. Oh, a Case of the Locked Hothouse, which will become solved and start getting them cards from the top of their library. It's not looking good for us, and missing on that Case File Auditor was pretty tragic. I suppose our best shot here is going for the makeshift binding. Yep, I think that's the scariest card. We do give them the 4/5 back, but stop them from healing for the time being, and can keep swinging in with our 6/6, putting a good amount of pressure. No blocks from the opponent. They're really valuing their 0/3 mana dork. Is there anything that gets us out of this? I mean, as Magic goes, I will surely top deck the Leyline of the Guild Pact here. When our opponent finds a Surveillance Monitor, exiling cards from their graveyard to make a 1/1 Thopter, but thankfully none of those cards are creature cards, so they won't be triggering their Insidious Roots, and they're likely to play their Culvert Ambusher face down. Oh, but instead they find a Eavesdropper off the top. They still have plenty of mana from their creature tokens. Only think that wins here is maybe a Buried in the Garden to get them off this Case of the Locked Hothouse, but they've already gotten so much value from it. I don't think this game is winnable. Wojak Investigator likely won't do it, but I'll keep playing this out and see how it goes. We still have plenty of pressure and plenty of blockers if they look to threaten our life total. And maybe Wojak Investigator will draw some cards next turn if they choose not to empty their hand. Opponent goes to draw with their clue and gets to untap with a whole bunch of mana and as many cards as they want to play. 15 cards left in the library. We've seen 10 lands. Maybe they have 1 or 2 lands in hand. So only around 5 of these cards are lands, the rest are playables. Not what we want to see. Oh, and their own chorus to kill. We're grabbing our Wojcik Investigator. We still have some solid blockers, but it's looking worse and worse. A Nervous Gardener off the top leaves them with 14 cards in the library, and a Vidugazi Inspector alongside a Projector Inspector. Draw discarding, 11 cards left in the library, but this is likely a lethal attack already, for the next turn at least. We still have some good blocks for now. Maybe looking to block one of their 3/3s if they swing in. Probably taking the damage from the Eavesdropper, or maybe just trumping it with one of our 1/1s. I'll just take the damage. We are likely dead here anyway, and just finding a land off the top will not be enough. Pass it over to the opponent. They'll keep hitting stuff off the top. A chalk outline now, and an evidence examiner to trigger their insidious roots. Start putting more and more material onto the board. Yeah, I don't think there's anything we could draw here. Even the Rakdos wouldn't take over the game. Opponent, I am blocking with everything, so it doesn't really matter what you choose with the Ambusher here. There's a small chance here. Maybe they... Let's see if they swing in with everybody. They're still left with 3 blockers, so pretty unlikely. Oh, and they're collecting evidence with this anyway, triggering their Insidious Roots, triggering their Surveillance Monitor, triggering the chalk outline. Yeah, I'll just pack it up. GG's opponent. Alright, on the draw this time, with a turn 2 Tipster into a Wojcik Investigator, or perhaps a Binding if they put anything scary on the board. Looks good to me. Public Thoroughfare is a little awkward here, but we're looking to fix our mana with it, at worst. Sadly, haven't drawn the Rakdos just yet, but looking forward to play it. Also haven't started with the Leyline of the Guild Pact either. Finding a Case of the Trampled Garden could be pretty good. And opponent's on green so far. Green-black with a Tunnel Tipster of their own. So let's run ours out. And maybe, I'm not sure what's best here. Oh, and a Cryptex. That's going to be a pretty useless card. If they swing here, yeah, I'm okay with taking this. Oh, but I guess they would start getting fodder for their Cryptex. I don't really care about taking 1 damage. Now a Gravestone Strider means I could maybe play the Thoroughfare along the Strider, or alongside the Strider, but maybe getting the Wojcik Investigator out is more important, or even the Case of the Trampled Garden. Not really looking to makeshift binding their Tipster, so likely not playing that. And yeah, I'll just go Strider plus the Thoroughfare, tapping down the Strider and holding setting up our tipster. Maybe dissuade them from attacking, though they're likely to offer the trade again. Oh, they don't. Interesting choice. I'll just run out the Killer Among Us. Naming human. And swing in with a Strider. No blocks from the opponent, means we get in for 1 damage. And here we could double spell, playing both the Wojciech Investigator as well as the Case of the Trampled Garden. And opponent packs it up, seeing a whole bunch of value on the board and probably little answers in their hand. Happy to take that win and go on to the next game. Alright, on the play now with some solid turn 2 plays with the Strider and the Panther to help us find more lands. And maybe the Crocodile on turn 3 if we find our 3rd land. I'll play out the Strider. Looking like we'll be able to get this Buried in the Garden off as well. And an Unscrupulous Agent from our opponent. I suppose I'll just get rid of this Airtight Alibi. And to just look to play our face down card, swinging in with the Strider and start whittling our opponent's health down. They are on 3 colors, showing white, black, and green. Following up with a Teysa Opulent Oligarch, which will not trigger and which we will happily take out with our Buried in the Garden. Swinging in with both of our creatures. And I'm happy that they ran that out instead of a face down creature, because otherwise our turn was looking pretty empty. And now we could even run out the Topiary Panther next turn. Oh, in the Case of the Shattered Pact will just be a dead card, but they're likely running 5 colors. Good lord. 5 color Unscrupulous Agent. Cool. I could even look to flip up the Crocodile, but I would rather put more power toughness onto the field with the Topiary Panther. I might have called it a Topiary Stomper earlier in the video, sorry if I did. Used to saying that name from Standard. Definitely not as powerful as a Stomper, but a very serviceable way to fix your mana and limited. And opponent just passes it over to us. I'll look to swing again with the team. Oh, but this might be an out cold. And that seems to be the case. They'll tap our creatures down, but I'll still get in for 1 damage with a Strider. And holding up the Makeshift Binding will stop any creatures that they put out. Ooh, a Killer Among Us, though, is a bit trickier of a card to take care of with Makeshift Binding. And they also flip their case, so that is pretty scary. Wow, so this is exactly the 4 colors that they needed to flip their case. Remarkable. And I'll look to flip our Crocodile now. Might as well use our mana. Oh, and finding a Wojciech Investigator is pretty nice. I'll keep on hitting their life total, swinging with a Strider. And maybe they'll get to attack with all their creatures, but I'm happy to just block this Unscrupulous Agent if they do attack with it. Otherwise, I'll take the 6 damage from the Killer Among Us. Oh, maybe it's a lot more damage. Oh, so, okay, so they named their human. Yeah, they'll get in for 8 damage here. But thankfully, we'll take care of this with our Makeshift Binding next turn. And we'll get to make a clue with our Wojciech Investigator if we get to untap with it. Gleaming Gear Drake from our opponent. Also pretty scary, but I think it's more important to take out their 4/4. Though they are growing their Gear Drake pretty fast, and this just caps out as a 4/4. we are threatening for a lot of damage with our Topiary Panther. Oh, and does opponents tap out? They find their land and play out a Projector Inspector. Not too scary. Yeah, I suppose just hitting the 4/4 with the binding is most important. But I'll start off by drawing with a clue, see if we find any more action. And just a land is fine enough. Let's go binding and swing with the team. Forcing a couple blocks at least. I guess we can hold the Gravestone Strider back. The 1 damage from it is unlikely to make a difference, and maybe we could face lethal on the Crackback. Oh, so they look to take out our Crocodile and take the damage from the Topiary Panther. Yeah, this is fine by me. Going down to 3, and I get to play out my Somala Sentry, which can block their flyer if they somehow make it huge and take out another one of our blockers. Crack their clue, growing their Gear Drake. So this could hit for 6 damage. Ooh, and a Kaya's Spirit Justice, maybe exiling one of our creatures, I suppose the Topiary Panther. They could make a copy of something. So they exile their Goblin. Oh, and our Topiary Panther makes sense. And they swing for 6 here. I could block with a Somala Sentry, but I could also just hold it up and deal 2 more damage to them next turn. Yeah, it might be relevant. Oh, I could even just look to take out the Kaya instead. So let's make our clue find land. Let's see what we hit off this draw. A Killer Among Us. Elf Archer Golem. Elf Archer Golem, Angel Detective. So none of these are the correct types. I'll attack like so. And this is pretty dangerous since our opponent could remove our Wojak Investigator and swing in for lethal with the Gear Drake, but I think it's more important to take out that Kaya, since anyway they could make blockers with it. They could maybe turn their Gear Drake into a 3/3 Ally Assailant. Oh, but I could have... no, I think it was more important to kill the Kaya there. But it's pretty scary. Pretty scary spot to be in. And a bite down on crime from opponent will seal the game. GG's opponent. Alright, game 6. On the play with a Tunnel Tipster into some Disguise creatures looks good enough to me. I'm missing some of our colors, but we have a good enough curve that I think we could keep this. I'll lead with red to throw our opponent off. They lead with an island, and I'll play out our tipster. Finding our white source for an Auditor, perhaps. Oh, and finding the Rakdos is pretty nice. I'll play the Warden face down. Look to start getting some damage in with this tipster, and putting a counter on it. Opponent on mono blue so far with a Projector Inspector might indicate a blue-white detective deck. Oh, more like blue-red, so blue-red artifacts of some sort. could play the Auditor here, or I could play another face down card, further buffing up our tipster. Do they ever block here? I guess so. Maybe it's just best to play the Auditor. Look to find some gas, and maybe the case is pretty good. Yeah, we could look to flip it with the Rakdos. Airtight Alibi represents protection for our creatures, but this helps us keep hitting our land drops, so I'll pick that up. Next turn we can run out Rakdos if they don't take out this Tunnel Tipster, and I'll actually swing in now that we found the case, since sure we losed out on our Crowd Control Warden, but it forces our opponent to play out a creature here. Oh, but they're just holding up their mana, maybe indicating that they have a counter of some sort. So with that in mind, I'll play our face down card instead, and look to swing in for 1 damage with our Auditor, playing out our second face down card. But there didn't seem to be a hold, so maybe they don't have a counter spell. A Living Conundrum opens up the way for Rakdos, drawing us 2 cards. Looks pretty good to me. Sadly, we can't flip our face down cards just yet, but I'm happy to get Rakdos here and draw 2 cards at the very least, but likely getting this removed. Though if we do get to untap with Rakdos, this is probably game, and opponent just packs it up, probably having no answers. Not sure what they were running with a Living Conundrum, and we saw blue, black, and red, I believe, so maybe it was some sort of 3-color grindy Drix's deck. Alright, I think this is match number 7 with a pretty keepable hand. We are on 2 losses, so 1 more loss and we're out, but this is looking to be a pretty good curve out, and we can hopefully put up a fight here. Seeing blue-white from our opponent and a Sanitation Automaton. Don't think you'd run this in a detective deck. Oh, they keep whatever they saw on top. Yeah, I don't think you'd run this in a detective deck, so this might be more than just blue-white. An inside source. Interesting. So this might just be a detective sort of theme. Guess we'll see. I'll start by playing the Snoop face down. Maybe just playing the Crocodile face down. Sure thing. And hold back our blockers. Since this way we have pretty good blocks, they can't get in with their detective, and we can take out their 1 toughness creatures if they swing with them. Maybe they could look to buff up their detective up to a 4/2 and swing with that, but I guess we could double block it, or maybe just take the damage. I don't think we really care for taking 4 damage, but they're very unlikely to do that, just following it up with another inside source. So now something like an on the job is pretty scary. Definitely looking to dodge that. And with that in mind, I might just go for a Buried in the Garden, or maybe just keep growing our board with our face down cards. Yeah, that's likely more important. Go ahead and play this face down card, pass it over. Opponent is missing double white for on the job. Wouldn't be surprised if they're also running red in this deck, but that would be a pretty greedy color base. Just a Novice Inspector, giving them a clue and maybe drawing with it to hit their land drop if they haven't. And it instantly went to combat, indicating that they didn't find the land. Cool. Our removal lines up pretty badly here. Not too happy to see that. I suppose I'll cycle the Panther, looking for either a black or a blue source so that I could flip our Fairy Snoop. And I'll just pass it over to our opponent, looking to flip the Fairy Snoop on end step and maybe find some sort of way to control this board. But if our opponent finds some sort of way to buff their creatures, we are in a pretty scary spot. We see a Deduce instead, drawing them a card and making a clue. And they find their next land, so that's likely what they drew just now, meaning they have 4 playables in hand. And it looks like they'll just be playing a face down card, hopefully not swinging with anybody. Sweet, so we got to turn our creature face up, finding either a Leyline of the Guild Pact or a Vengeful Creeper. The Leyline is pretty useless here, so I'll just pick up the Creeper. Happy to put that in the bin. And I suppose I could hit their face down card with the Makeshift Binding, and I'm quite happy to do that. Not too keen to find out what that is. And it was just a Fairy Snoop. So I'll just go ahead and play this Thoroughfare and tap down one of our creatures, holding up our blockers. Maybe letting them in for some damage, but this isn't the worst spot. We have plenty of land, we have our colors, and we have plenty of playables as well. Now Private Eye does buff up a bunch of their creatures, but we happily take care of this with our Buried in the Garden. We can block one of their attackers and take 5 damage. Maybe they look to buff one of them up with the Inside Source, but doesn't seem to be the case. Yep, I'll just block one of these like so. And now a Seasoned Consultant, which also gets buffed up by the Private Eye, but thankfully we are following up with this Buried in the Garden. Taking care of their Lord and maybe playing another face down card. I'll play the Vengeful Creeper face down, since next turn we could look to turn it face up and take out their Sanitation Automaton. I think that would be pretty good value, getting them slightly off the board and putting more power toughness into the field. But we might just even look to run out one of our face down cards here, or both of our face down cards. Clog up the board that way. Let's see how they play it out first. Oh, they swing with all. Surely showing us that they have on the job here. On the job is +1/+1, right? I am googling it just to be sure. Gives creatures +2/+1. I suppose I'm okay with losing out on this guy. So this is 3, 6, 10. And I could, oh no, that's +2/+1. Maybe I just chump here. 14, 17 damage, and we get to keep 2 creatures. Down to 2 is pretty scary. Yeesh. Guess maybe we double block here, so at least we take out 2 of their creatures. Likely taking us off our face down creatures here. Maybe taking us off our Fairy Snoop. Oh, actually we don't trade with the Seasoned Consultant here. So it might be right to just play it like this, preserving our health a little more, and at least trading with one of the creatures. So they finally got their on-the-job off, finding their second plains. I guess that was last turn that they found it. They leave us with 5 health, but thankfully we could put up more blockers next turn and hopefully get out of lethal range. And I think it best to play these face down, yeah, especially since we could also flip the Fairy Snoop. So we've got some okay blocks here. We can block the Consultant with our Fairy Snoop. We can maybe block the Inspector with one of our face downs, block the Automaton with another face down, and maybe block the 2/2 with our Strider. They have another inside source, so that's 3 inside sources. And a face down card means they won't be buffing up one of their creatures with the inside source. Now, will they attack with everybody? Oh, no attacks. Very happy to see that. Means I could flip up our Fairy Snoop and find us another card. Topiary Panther represents a pretty good blocker, so I'll pick that up. Alongside a Sumala Sentry, which could get buffed up by the Riftburst Alien down the line. Alright, we've somewhat stabilized this board, but another buff effect from our opponent could be pretty scary. Perhaps this is a Granite Witness. It's probably the card that makes the most sense for them to have face down. Alternatively, it could be a really scary Aurelia's Vindicator, but hopefully it's not. I think they would have used it by now if it was. Guess it could also be the removal elephant card, the Gatekeeper. Finding a land here is a little awkward, but we still have a good enough presence on board. They've got 10 attackers, we've got 6 blockers, meaning they could probably get in for like 4 damage, but then we'd take out the rest of their creatures. Sure. I'll just pass it over. Hope that our opponent doesn't have a way to remove a creature or buff up their creatures. And seeing as there's a hold, likely indicates that one of these cards is a Granite Witness. Oh, meaning that they'll tap down one of our cards and likely swing for lethal next turn, tapping our Sumala Sentry, yep. So yeah, pretty close game. If they swing with everybody here, it's lethal. But maybe they respect the card in our hand and hold back for another turn. That's why it's important not to always play your lands, since you could certainly bluff having something. But opponent swings with the team. And it doesn't really matter how we block here, since they're going to be hitting us for 5, but might as well go for the best set of blocks. Yeah, so if we hadn't gotten this Sentry tap down, we could have blocked the Detective as well and only have taken 4 damage. that'll be the end of our run. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And I suppose I'll catch you for the next Limited Wednesdays iteration. And a Mistway Spy. Getting them a bunch of investigates. Not that it matters since the game is over. But yeah, likely playing some more Premier Draft for the next iteration, and I'll see you there. Have a good one.